Hey everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and in this episode, we're going to be building our very first creepy crawly from the guys over at Metal Earth, a tarantula. Will we be able to weave this model into fruition, or will we get caught in our own web? Groovers, let's get down to the workbench and take a look at the package.
Alright, Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Metal Earth tarantula here in some pretty awesome classic Metal Earth packaging. This spider looks awesome. Groovers, let's take a look at the back of the package. On the back, we have that classic Metal Earth logo, some information on the tarantula, how to build this model, some information on what this package contains, and at the very bottom, we have that all-important QWERTY code. We can scan this to get a 360 view of our model if we need it while we're building. Groovers, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions, and we have our metal. And yep, it's just one sheet. Look at that body though, very neat. Alright Groovers, let's get building. Kicking off our model by forming our first piece, I think this is a great time for us to take a look at the instructions together. Now, one thing I'm going to mention real quickly is you might realize I'm using the new instructions with a classic Metal Earth kit. Now, there's virtually no difference between the parts or how they come together. It's just how the instructions look, and for ease of use, I'm going to use the newest instructions. So with that being said, Groovers, starting at the top, we have that brand new Metal Earth logo, followed by a nice depiction of our tarantula. Just below that, we have a 360 QWERTY code that we can scan to get a better look at our detail if we need it while we're building. Just below our QWERTY code and to the left, we have a very important piece diagram. This shows us what our insertion tabs, our fold lines, and our insertion holes look like. This is very important, so make sure that if you haven't built these models before, you take a good look at this diagram. This will be very useful for you while you're building this model. To the right, we have the all-important legend, and the first two things we see in the legend is the engraved side and non-engraved side. These two little bubbles tend to pop up when there's a lot of engraved detail on a piece. Always make sure you follow them, because if you don't, you might have these engraved pieces not on the right way, and at the very end of your model, it might look a little goofy. Below our two bubbles, we have the attention point. When we see this icon throughout our instructions, it just means we need to pay a little bit more attention to what we're doing with that particular step. This could be because this part's easily breakable, or it might be a little bit finicky to get in there. Up next, we have the all-important circles and triangles, and Groovers, these are sprinkled throughout our entire directions, so it's very important that we understand what these mean. When we see our circles, we need to make sure that we take as much of the tab as possible in our tweezers and bend that down 90 degrees, as flush as possible with the metal that we're bending it to. Now, when we see our triangle friends, it's very important to take as much of the tab as possible in your tweezers and twist it 90 degrees. Personally, I prefer to twist as much of my tabs as possible, but for cosmetic reasons, sometimes it is better to bend them over. Groovers, if you're new to metal model building, I recommend just following the instructions with how the tabs are supposed to be bent. Once you get a little bit more experience under your belt, you can definitely try some other methods like hiding your tabs. But just know that if you're going to be doing this, you do run the risk of breaking your tabs and possibly destroying your model. Moving on over to the right, we have our recommended tools section, and Groovers, I definitely recommend a good set of cutters. You're going to want these for cutting out the different pieces out of our metal. You don't want any little bit of spurs on there, so the finer the cutters, the better. Now just below that, they recommend tweezers and a good set of needle nose pliers. Both of these are definitely recommended for this build, and if you really want to be pro, I would definitely recommend getting a good set of detail tweezers, because they have all different kinds of tweezers in there for you to be able to get into hard to reach spots. But again, it's not a necessity, and I hope to be releasing a video soon that's going to go over all the different kinds of tools that you might need for metal model building, so stay tuned for that. And just below our tools section, we have the all-important parts diagram. Now Groovers, I always recommend taking our metal and orientating it to this particular picture. This makes it very easy for us to be able to find our parts when we need them. Keeping organized, Groovers, no matter what hobby we're doing, is always the best way to go. And with that, I think we're all done with our instructions, and it looks like we're just finishing up with our legs as well. Now, personally, I'm okay with tarantulas, but I know a lot of people out there are scared of spiders. I found a poem that I think will be good for those people though. For some tropical reason, when the rain falls relentlessly, they fall into swimming pools, these otherwise bright and scary arachnids. They can swim a little, but not for long, and they can't climb the ladder out. They usually drown, but if you want their favor, if you believe there is justice, a reward for not loving, the death of an ugly and even dangerous creature, if you believe these things, then you would leave a life buoy or two in your swimming pool at night. And in the morning, you would haul ashore the huddled, hairy survivors and escort them back to their bush. And no, be assured that at least these saved as individuals would not turn up again someday in your hat, your drawer, or tangled underworld of your socks. And that even when your belief in justice merges with your belief in dreams, that they may tell the others in a sign language 4 times as subtle and complicated as man that you are good, that you love them, and that you would save them again. I rather like that passage called Tarantulas on a Life Buoy by Thomas Lux. I think it's a good depiction of karma, wouldn't you say? I just don't see too many people going out and putting life buoys in their pools, though. Such a shame.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. Our spider friend here turned out pretty good if you ask me. And if I had to pick a name, I think I would name you Charlotte.
I don't think that will work.
Okay, yeah, no, fair enough. I didn't know you were a man. So how about Winston?
Winston? I like it.
Well, then that settles it. Everyone, this is Winston. Winston, welcome to Groove Builders, the show where we create together. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to tell our friends here how to build you in construction. My first point when it comes to building our friend here is remembering to keep that first piece in the metal while you bend all the little bits of detail. Groovers, if you do accidentally cut that piece out before bending the metal, it's not the end of the world, but it will be a little bit harder to bend the detail without warping that first piece. Just take your time and everything should turn out fine. My second point is about these 2 domes right here. I really like them for new builders because they're nice and big and easy to form. Let's talk about forming these really quickly if this is your first time. The first thing I recommend doing is taking a look at the piece and see where the different seams are supposed to line up. Then, slowly take each petal and follow the seam around, slowly bending the piece a little bit each time. Take your time doing this, Groovers, and at the very end, you should have a very nice shaped dome. My last point is a little bit silly, but I guarantee it's going to save at least one groove builder out there. Always double check your parts before placing them onto your models, especially with the front part here of this spider. Now, if you look at the front, you'll notice these 2 little dots. Those are the eyes of our friend Winston, and if they aren't in the front, they're going to be facing the rear, and it will look a little bit odd. So Groovers, make sure you double check your parts before putting them on the spider, and if you do find yourself putting them on the wrong way, just take your time taking them off. The last thing you want to do at the very end of your build is possibly warp or break a piece. And with that being said, Groovers, let's move on to build time. Our little friend Winston here has some pretty interesting detail along the bottom and on the top with these 2 domes, and that's where I spent the majority of my time building. Now, Groovers, in all, I only spent about 45 minutes building this tarantula, and I think that's going to be about average for most Groovers out there. But as always, it's not a race, so Groovers, enjoy your build. And finally, Groove Builders, my thoughts. As you can probably tell, I like this little guy, not just because of his look, but also because of his build design. I can very easily recommend this model to any new groove builder out there who's looking to get into metal models, just because the instructions are so clear. Even in the hard parts, they do a very good job of explaining and showing you how to get these little bends that you need to be able to get. But also, if you're looking to try some different techniques, this model's a good one for it. For instance, I've been trying to do better at hiding my tabs so they're not as visible in all of my models. I did this method with the front and back tabs on both of the domes, and I'd say it turned out pretty good. But Groovers, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody out there who's new to metal model building. Alright Groovers, that brings us to the end of our show. I had a really good time building our friend Winston here, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Until next time, Groove Builders, keep building. Alright now, Winston, time to show you around the Groove Builders headquarters.